first of all, I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and I hope that the 2022 is very safe and prosperous for all of you. I'll just do my introduction as a part of my session. So let me just share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can.
Yes. So I am currently working as a PM manager in the PowerPoint team, and it's very odd to give talks without a PowerPoint presentations for us. So I have prepared a small deck that can actually navigate this topic. So the topic that I will be presenting on today is a dilemma that a lot of product managers face in their career, which is whether they should build a particular technology or whether they should buy it for a problem that they are solving. So in today's session, I'm going to first talk about my corporate journey in a very short brief. And then we're going to talk about build versus buy dilemma introduction, because I can imagine that there would be a lot of budding product managers in this call. So they would want to know that what actually is this dilemma. Then I would share from my experience what are the factors that you should consider and what is the cheat sheet framework that you can use to take the call that whether you should build or whether you should buy. And finally, I'll give you an example that what I have seen is the industry trend of this dilemma, and we will also take Arun's input since he is also on the panel. So moving on, I'll explain myself about the corporate journey. So I graduated with a BTech degree in 2013 from Bharatiya Vidyapeeth College of Engineering, New Delhi. And I started off with a company named Aricent, which is currently, I think, Capgemini India or Altran, because that they acquired it. I started off with a developer role. So I was coding in C for the LTE, which is long-term evolution 4G. But right from the start of my career, I knew that I don't want to become a developer. So very soon I actually transitioned to software development engineering and test in Adobe, wherein I had a very rich experience working on Creative Cloud mobile apps, Adobe Spark, and Adobe XD. Adobe Spark and XD were the V1 tools that were launched in Adobe at that point of time. And it was a very enriching experience to see that how new products get launched. And how the product management team and marketing team work together to think about the product, solve users' problem, and launch it to the world. That intrigued me a lot, and I thought that I should try something in the field of either product management or marketing. And I knew that that's not going to happen in Adobe. So I thought that why don't I join some company where I can show merit and actually transition relatively faster than a multinational organization. So I joined Grofers as an estate in the Grofers mobile application. And when the opportunity arose, and while I was working as stretch time to learn more about product management, also observing the product managers in Grofers from sidelines, I thought that why not switch to product management? So internally, I gave an interview, I got qualified, and I started my career in Grofers as an APM, just like Priyanka mentioned. There were two things that I took care of, Grofers consumer application and Grofer consumer website. So essentially, multiple areas within these two is something that I started my journey with, and I owe a lot what I am today to Grofers, because I feel that is the organization which gave me a chance to become a product manager and a lot of rich experience that I got that day. Then I thought that I should probably switch and gain product management experience at a firm which has large scale products and apply to multiple companies. I didn't know that life will bring me back to a multinational corporation again, like Adobe, and I joined Microsoft as a PM. So it's been a 3.5-year journey with Microsoft. I started off with the Office mobile app, which we launched as a V1 product, and it's available on the Play Store and App Stores. And then I moved to PowerPoint AI, where we are essentially leveraging the machine learning trends in the industry to make PowerPoint users be more productive and help them with the mission that we have. So this is a small introductory journey about me. Apart from PM, I actually love reading books, trying a lot of food cuisines, and also traveling. So those are the things that keep me busy outside of work. Now let's get going to the next topic, which is the topic of the day for me, which is build versus buy dilemma. So I'm going to explain a few cases where I have actually seen this dilemma in my life. So and these are the examples that I actually faced while I was in Grofers. So I was working in the Grofers payment pod, and we were thinking, so there were multiple problems that were happening. So our finance CFO came to us and said that I am paying a lot of merchant discount rate to a lot of payment aggregators, and I want to reduce that to improve my balance sheet. So we sat down and we discussed, and we came to a conclusion that spreadsheet. How can you help? Via marketing team were coming to us and saying that we want to run a lot of offers. A lot of wallets are essentially asking us that we will fund your offers. Why don't you go live with us? For example, Paytm was coming on board. Ola Postpaid was coming on board. PhonePe was coming on board. But if we do one-to-one integration, it would take a lot of time. So the idea was that should we build a payment switch which help us increase the success rate of payments, which we wanted to do for our users and simultaneously help our marketing and finance teams? Or should we just integrate a solution which is available in market called JustPay, which can help us solve the problem? Then we were actually dealing, I spent around 6 months in the customer support team, and there were a lot of problems where people were doing fraud orders and actually trying to gain money via using offers. So we thought that should we build our own fraud detection engine because the complexities and the issues that we are facing are something that we know, or should we just integrate a third-party solution named Third Eye, which was quite prevalent in the market, and we have heard their pitch. Similarly, we wanted to reduce the average resolution time for any company. And that's why rather than email, we wanted to introduce chat. This is back in 2016. So the question was, should we build our own chatbot solution or should we integrate Fresh Chat SDK, which was one of the popular SDKs at that point of time? And finally, it's not always that you buy something, you sometimes buy services of the people also. So when we were building the Grofers web application and building a PWA, we wanted to do search engine optimization. And we were thinking that should we hire engineers who can do this? Should we train our current engineers who can learn and then do this? Or should we just hire a consultant who can do this for us and then we can continue to optimize on it? So as you see, in the whole career of Grofers, which is 1.5 years in product management, I came across four problems. Actually, there were more than four, where I felt that should I buy or should I build? So this is one of the most important dilemmas that you will regularly face in your product management career. However, that being said, I will say that it is actually a question that everybody faces, but it is quite dependent on the industry type, which is, are you working in a product-based company, service-based company, startup, multinational corporation? And we'll deep dive into that in a few slides from now. Stage of the company. So what are you building? Are you building iteratively into a very mature product, as in are you only optimizing the funnel, or are you just building a 0 to 1 product? And what is the type of problem that you're solving? So it's a function of multiple parameters. Might happen that you don't face this problem in your whole career in one organization, and you face this problem 10 times in another organization. And this has actually happened. I have faced this problem more than 5 times in Grofers. However, I haven't faced this problem even once in Microsoft. And I'll tell you why in the upcoming slides. But this is a dilemma and the caveat that you have to include there. Now, coming to the meat of the talk, which is what are the factors that you should consider in terms of finding a solution of build versus buy. So in my opinion, it's a mix of strategic and tactical. The first is strategic, which is you have to actually see that whatever you want to build, how much does it align with the strategy or the vision or the mission that you have for the organization? For example, while we were building Grofers, our USP was that we'll build warehouses, which is an inventory made model, and then we will procure orders in demand. We will congregate them, and then we will serve orders using our last mile delivery. Right. So our expertise was in e-commerce. And let's say if we have to send notifications to our users using our mobile application, and we wanted to create a lot of niche requirements in that notification system. For example, geography-based notifications or cohort-based notification. For example, people who only order with an average order value of greater than 1200. There are two things that we can do. One we can build, one we can buy. Since that problem does not align with the e-commerce proposition or the strategic vision that we have, the answer should be that we should buy rather than build. Because if we build, we are actually having an opportunity cost wherein we are going away from the mission that we are chasing with the resources that we have. So that is the strategic alignment picture that comes into the. Now, there are a lot of tactical factors that also comes in because they influence sometimes your strategy. And there are a lot of times when the strategic alignment question says yes, but there are a lot of tactical alignment question which says no, and then you have to change. For example, time to market is one. Let's say if we want to launch a feature very soon, and we know that it has to happen in 3 months. However, the time to build is more than 6 to 9 months. What should we do? Then time to market becomes very important, and we have to buy. For example, if you really want to build a solution of, let's say, buy now, pay later in e-commerce, you know that you can build this. You have a credit line, you can build this in terms of backend pipelines and all, but the cost of development would be high. However, you need to actually bring this solution very soon because you want to serve credit to your customers so that they can buy the large appliances from the website. Then time to market actually compels you to do a buy decision. Secondly, is competency. There are a lot of times when you would say yes to problems, but you don't have the competency. For example, when we were building the website and we wanted to do search engine optimization, so a lot of users actually see grocers at the top when they are searching for tomatoes or any of the grocery products in their region. We wanted to do search engine optimization, but we didn't have the competency to do it. Is aligned to our strategic alignment. It also has time to market, and we can also wait. It's not that sooner that we needed, but we didn't have the competency to build it. That's why we thought of an option that why don't we consult somebody who can do it for us, because that person bread and butter is to do SEO, so they can do it very fast. We can pay them for their services, and then we can continue to optimize and maintain, because in parallel we can build that competency rather than we build that competency by taking a few months and then try to build it. The third is cost comparison, which is a very standard mathematical equation that you compare the cost of buying with cost of building. The only nuance that I would iterate from my experience is that when you are actually calculating the cost of building, people usually do that what is the number of developers that is needed, the man months that are needed to build this, and what is the cost of that man month. It only covers the initial building cost. There are a lot of costs that you have to see in the future. The cost of optimizing performance, the cost of maintaining, the cost of adding new features if your feature actually gains product market fit and you actually have to add more functionalities to it. So you have to inculcate all the costs that are associated with building. And when you go to buy, you have to again include all the costs. Only the license cost is not the thing that you are going to include. You have to include the engineer's bandwidth in terms of integrating that solution, maintaining it, and if there are new features required, how much time do you have to spend with that company in explaining the requirement, following up, because that time also equals a money value. So you have to do both. And very often when you run into that situation and try to do this, you will see that one solution will actually win by the other solution by a huge margin. For example, if one cost comes out to be, let's say, 2 lakh rupees, the other cost would be around 28,000 or 40,000 rupees. So the one cost will always outweigh the second one, and that will help you in taking that decision. Simplicity is another nuance that you have to take into picture. It's not a popular one, but sometimes if you are operating in a segment where being lean or where being fast as an application or product is really, really important, you have to see that how much baggage does the buying solution bring to you in the table. Let's say if the SDK is very heavy and it increases your app size, or if the integration is very heavy and it has a different hosting solution and produces a lot of technical debt in your product, that's something which you have to consider, which probably will lead you to do build rather than buy. Because in building, you will take care of your current code architecture and build from that point of view, rather than buying will introduce unnecessary complexities. And finally, which is data security and compliance. So this is a thing that you face a lot in multinational companies. We face a lot in Microsoft, wherein we are operating at such huge scale that the number of monthly active users we have for our product, probably that kind of traffic, a solution that we want to integrate hasn't seen before. So we are not willing to share the data of our customers. We are not willing to compromise on the security of the data of our customers. And that is why we are hesitant in terms of buying anything and rather we build. And it's not something which I'm only saying for Microsoft. There are multiple companies which don't buy because of this particular. So these are the nuances that I feel we should take into account while we build and buy. Uh, However, this is all theoretical gyan that I'm giving you. There is also a cheat sheet framework that you can follow, which gives you an easy answer that when to build and when to buy. So these are the situations that I feel that when you should build and when you should buy. For example, if a problem is aligned with your core mission, you should build. If you have very less money to buy, uh, let's say it does not align to your core mission at all, you should buy, but you don't have money. You are either bootstrapped or you are seed stage and you don't have the money to buy a solution which is very expensive in the market. Then you have no option other than building. If you have security and compliance compliance as one of your company's top priority, you have to build, because no solution will be able to cater to your demand. If you have very niche set of requirements which you think a solution can meet, but they will not be able to meet in the future when your requirement gets much more stringent, you have to build. And finally, if you want to solve a problem that actually there is no solution in the market which solves in the best possible way, you have to build, because there is no other solution. But I think this only happens when you are building something which is related to your core mission. For example, in Grofers, we were trying to build an experiment called group buying, which means that if I want to buy, let's say, an art of 230 rupees, and I ask Arun that why don't you buy with me, both of us would get that art at 210, 20 rupees discount to both of us. It's a model which is very prevalent in China, popularized by an app called Pinduoduo. This solution we will not find in the market, because this is very much related to our core mission, and no solution will try to solve this particular part. So we have to build this, because this is something very unique to e-commerce and the kind of grocery hyper sale business that we were making. And then you can also see a lot of reasons that tells you that when you should buy. Moving on, in my opinion, that the orange board that you see out there is the reason when you only build. Rest white of it is all buy, and it happens in startups mainly. So the industry trend that I have seen is that in startups, in 90% of the situations, you usually buy the solution to fulfill your problem, because you are very lean as a company and you want to uh, reach your mission very sooner. You are fighting for survival, so you can't build all the problems that you are facing. In fact, you buy so that you can reach the stage faster. However, in multinational companies, you often build rather than buy, because of data security and compliance reasons, because of multiple other nuances of privacy that you don't want to do it. I have heard that Amazon does not buy a lot of solutions. They usually build. And I also saw this firsthand when I came to Microsoft 3.5 years back. I say 90% because there are 10% situations when multinational companies also buy. For example, Microsoft does not build a payroll software. They outsource it to a vendor. They use their tool. They don't build a medical management system software where all insurance is covered. HR software, all of these things is something which they actually outsource or buy a product for. But all of the other things they don't do. For example, I was in Adobe and we used to use Concur for filing expenses and traveling it. We also use in Microsoft. So I don't see these companies building for that use case also, because it's not aligned to the strategic mission, which was the first part. Arun, do you have any experience from your experience which you want to add here? Because this is just a disclaimer, this is biased from my experience. So something which you want to add.
Absolutely. And thanks, Mohit. I think it's a great summary, um, especially the last couple of slides, which give the cheat sheet and the factors to consider. I'd like to say that, as you mentioned about strategic alignment, companies, it's like, for example, if companies will usually keep their core competence or their primary offering to the market as something that they build and not buy, right? However, it might take a while for startups to even find a product market fit. And initially buying, and when Mohit says buying, it's not packaged software or even cloud software, it could be services. For example, in my company, when we started as a startup, there were no engineers. So even though it was supposed to be it is a software app company, we had to buy the initial skill of product development and app development from an outsourced partner and then transition that in-house. So that can be a thumb rule that essentially once you figure out what your core offering is, you will tend to bring that in-house into a build mode, though you might start with a buy mode, right? The other couple of advantages or comparisons between buy versus build, which would be part of the cheat sheet, is that buy often lets you do a quick and easy POC, which is quite cheap. For example, right before my current company, I was with UiPath, which is a robotic process automation solutions provider. And many companies don't know whether they want to invest too heavily on robotic process automation and the corresponding skills. So they often turn to a software solutions service provider to ask, hey, can you do a quick proof of concept of robotic process automation for us as a client, so that we know, does this thing work? Does this thing make sense to us strategically? If so, then they will invest in hiring the right RPA engineers, setting up the right processes, infrastructure, and so on. But if not, it has not been too expensive for them to try out a POC and conclude that it failed, and hence they don't want to go ahead with it, right? So that is kind of like the go-to-market gestation period, a point that Mohit touched upon, which is that if you decide upfront that you want to build something, you might have to invest a lot of money and time into getting the right skills, into getting the right infrastructure in your company, and hence you are highly committed, right? One of the other sides of build versus buy, I would say, is that always remember that over the long term, there is an additional margin of the provider, which you are continuously paying month over month, right? So if you're planning to have a solution provider and essentially go for the buy mode, as Mohit said, take into account all the costs. It is not just the initial setup cost, it's the cost of maintenance. And the cost of maintenance can often be huge, but is overlooked. For example, it's like keeping your house in order, right? Clean. It's not just about buying it for the first time and saying that, okay, my paint is fine, my furniture is okay, and my wardrobe is fine, and so on. You have to keep doing maintenance on it and keep your house clean month after month, and that takes effort and time and money. So it's the same thing with software. There'll be bug fixes, there'll be improvements, and so on that come. The buy situation needs to take into account those costs and those investments. So yes, those are the couple of inputs, Mohit.
Thanks, Arun, for sharing your thoughts. And I agree on the second point very lot. In fact, I would share an example which makes it very descriptive for the audience here. While I was in Grofers, there was a company named Simple. It also exists today, which is a buy now, pay later solution. And they contacted us that you integrate with us, customers don't have to pay. We will give them a credit. For example, if Arun comes to Grofers and actually uses Simple to pay, he does not have to pay at that moment. Let's say if he buys an order of, let's say, 1200, he has to pay 1200 to Simple after 20 days or after a month or so, right? And what they were taking from Grofers is a higher merchant discount rate, a higher commission than other credit cards and debit cards. So we integrated because the hypothesis that we had was that the average order value would increase because people don't have to pay right now. So human psychology says that if you don't have to pay right now, you actually buy a lot. And that's the philosophy on which credit cards also work. So we did that, and our hypothesis was correct. The average order value playing with Simple was 25% higher than the rest of the average order value. So the cost of buying was very less in comparison to cost of if we would have created a buy now pay later solution, right? So we just did that. Now what happened was, since Simple was a very nascent company at that point of time, they came to us that you have to update the SDK. Every month, every 15 days, they came to us that you have to update the SDK. There is some security lapse, there is some improvement that we are doing. Please ensure, please ensure. And we were running on very tight schedule, the payments team in Grofers. They already had a long roadmap. And it was very difficult to accommodate all those things, right? As a product manager, faced a lot of problems because I was also new in my cycle to how should I say no to a lot of times because I understand the rationale that they're coming. So this is the cost of maintenance that you also have to take into account, that what is the partner that you're working with, what is the futuristic thing that you can account, and these are the things. If I use Grofers today, I'm no longer a part of that organization. I don't see Simple in the options. And I know that this is probably the reason that they delisted Simple, because they couldn't spend the effort and never brought it back, right? So this is one of the experiences that you should learn from, because multiple people have burned their hands not accounting maintenance cost. Finally, I wanted to end this with a fun fact. I'm not sure how many of you know the story of Slack. So Stewart Butterfield, who actually launched Flickr, is a popular entrepreneur who launched also a gaming company called Glitch. When they were launching Glitch, they didn't have a lot of money, so they built a communication app which was used by the employees to communicate between US and Canadian offices. Glitch didn't find product market fit; they actually shut it down. But then there were a lot of people who said that the chat application is pretty cool. So the application is Slack, and you actually use it. So it is a classic case where you see that the less money led to building, and actually it's a software which is bought by a lot of lakhs of organization today. So, however, I would also say it with a caveat: this is a classic story of survivorship bias. Not every company ends up like that, so you should have that disclaimer, but that's why I'm sharing it as a fun fact that sometimes building also lead to find a solution which actually you can sell, and there are a lot of stories like that, but all of them are surprises. Now, I would like to end it in a way that, let's say if you chose to build rather than buy, you already have a lot of things that you have to build, right? So how would you form a backlog and how would you prioritize it in terms of execution, because you have limited number of engineer, designers, and PMs in your team? This is a topic that Arun will cover in the next section, and I hope to learn from Arun in the next subsequent section. So over to you, Arun.
Thank you. Priyanka, would you like to say something?
Yeah. I just wanted to introduce you, but I think it's already done, so you can go ahead.
Sure, great. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Give me a moment. There, is everyone able to see the title slide? Great. So, as Mohit mentioned, you have made a certain decision whether to build or buy software or services from a partner, and you're off to a good start, ready to get to market, test your product out with your target customer base. A lot of exciting times ahead. As you progress on this journey of product management, of building a product and taking it to market, you will have reviews with your senior management. In general, it's necessary to have a plan and have visibility. I'm avoiding the use of the word plan. So we'll talk about product backlogs and product roadmaps, right? So that is where the product backlog or product roadmap comes into picture, and we'll take a look at how to build and prioritize, right? So we'll quickly take a look at what is a product backlog or product roadmap, how to build it, how to prioritize it, and hopefully we can have a great discussion around that and end with some nice thoughts, right? So what is a product backlog, right? At the very basic level, it's essentially a laundry list of features or initiatives that you want to do with your product, right? Now, there can be a lot of nuances and a lot of ways of presenting it, of debating upon it. So those are some of the factors that we take a look at, right? Product backlogs are often maintained at multiple levels. There could be more than these two, but there are at least these two. So at the senior leadership level, the CXO or the VP level of the organization, you have major pillars or initiatives of the company. For example, Amazon might say, okay, we want to go ahead with AWS, or we want to go ahead with Amazon Go, which is the completely no humans, no employees part of the store kind of grocery or everything store, right? That's just a couple of examples. Someone else might have some other kind of major pillars, major initiatives that they want to push, right? So that will have a kind of list that, okay, what should our company do to achieve our mission and vision, right? This sounds very abstract, but it can come to something as concrete as, hey, if Google wants to make information more easily accessible to their users, then someone would have come up with a broad feature roadmap or feature backlog saying we need to build Google Maps, we need to build Google Mail, we need to build whatever, we need to build Google Pay or whatever, right? So those are the major pillars and initiatives of the company. They often get spun off into separate business lines or BUs and have their own P&L tracking and things like that, right? Now, at a product manager level, whether you're at a product manager, senior product manager, or at a lead or director level, often you are managing a team which is trying to execute and deliver on those pillars or initiatives of the company, right? So here you are likely to be using Agile, and what is Agile, how to use it effectively is an entirely different conversation. Understand that the symptoms of using Agile, right, or some of the froth is that you will see people using words like Scrum and user stories and release management and A/B testing and phase rollout and things like that. That alone do not make Agile. Agile is an entire different philosophy. However, at that team, at that Scrum or that Agile team level, the team would be maintaining a backlog of what are the deliverables for each initiative. For example, let's take the example of Bajaj Finserv Health, where I work right now, or at Ola, which I used to work at previously. So Ola has obviously started Ola Electric, but it's an entirely different organization with its own roadmap. Let's take a look at Ola cabs, which are the daily cabs that people use. They would have a bunch of initiatives saying, how can we engage drivers better? How can we provide better value and better visibility to customers so that they can trust that the rides that they book on the Ola app are safe and clean and reliable and on time, and great value for money, and so on, right? So these would be some of the hard problems that they're trying to crack. So for that, they would have a bunch of enhancements, features, user stories saying that for example, for the last several years, you have features where they commit a price upfront, and unless things go badly wrong or you change your ride parameters and things like that, the committed price is what you pay, right? So that brings more confidence and visibility into the ride as for the customer as far as an Ola cab is concerned. Again, take the example of Bajaj Finserv Health, and you can go to the website or download the app to know more. Bajaj Finserv Health offers a number of features or a number of value propositions to the target customer. For example, you can book doctor appointments, you can book lab appointments, you can view hospitals, you can store your medical records and prescriptions and invoices and so on. So all of those are company initiatives, or essentially building blocks of the offering to the customer. And each of these teams would have their own backlog that says, how do I make the experience of finding a doctor, being able to teleconsult with them, being able to get good recommendations and a good consulting experience, being able to get a prescription that I can easily read and understand, and maybe easily order medicines from according to the prescription, whatever, right? All of these kind of features or initiatives be part of the doctor booking experience. Similarly, for any of the other different experience, those would be held at a per initiative or at a Scrum team level, and then they further get broken down into per quarter, per month. That becomes a plan, right? Remember that backlogs or roadmaps are prioritized, not planned to dates. What do I mean by that? All you're saying is you will do A before B, right? You're not saying that A will be done by February and B will be done by March or April, right? That takes an entirely new level of detail, because you would need to know what engineering is required to be able to build such a feature or such an enhancement. What is the testing framework that is required? What are any edge cases or fraud or misuse that could happen? What if something goes wrong? Does the entire feature come to a halt, or are you able to get over that one bug or one mistake that happens and continue pushing that feature, right? You can't bring your company to a halt just because some mistake happened, and mistakes are bound to happen. People are human, whatever. So mistakes are bound to happen, right? So the point I'm trying to make is the roadmap or the backlog is prioritized, saying we'll do this before this, but not necessarily, and actually not planned to dates. Once it's planned to dates, it becomes a delivery plan, and that is tracked by PMO and by release management and delivery management to ensure that we are delivering on schedule, on budget, on quality. So that's a whole different thing, right? Where do you use this? You often use this to make go, no-go decisions. So let's take an extreme example. Say someone comes up with a product backlog item at the senior leadership level for Microsoft, saying that Microsoft needs to get into the grocery business, or they need to start selling soap, right? Possibly some VP comes up with such an initiative that will get discussed at the highest levels, and obviously will get shot down in this particular example. But it could be, for example, Swiggy might say, we want to enter the ready-to-eat food business. They have recently entered the instant grocery delivery business, right? So the product backlog or product roadmap is used for go, no-go decisions. In some companies, this forum for making these decisions is called the ship room, where you sign off saying, yes, this aligns strategically, this aligns with our vision for the company. It's good to go. We are ready to invest in it and move ahead with it. I'm just taking some comments from the chat. Okay, very nice. Right. So moving on. Right. Now, how do you build a product backlog? First, ideate and list functionality that aligns with the vision of the org. So if the vision of the org of any of the examples that we take is to make a certain impact on the world. So for example, how consumers consume healthcare, or how consumers access software, or how businesses run their enterprises efficiently in the case of, say, ERP software like Oracle or SAP or things like that. So you might have this broad statement that needs to be made true, right? So that is the vision of the org. So the senior management or anyone, ideas are often brought bottom up, and they could be very small enhancements and iterations, or very large initiatives that are suggested by members of the team at any level. These are literally discussed and bubbled up and forth. So to figure out which of these ideas align with the vision of the organization, with the vision of the individual team, and then take it forward, right? One of the prerequisites for doing this, which is getting rarer and rarer in today's world of disruption, is that you would want a visibility of 1 to 5 years. I mean, 5 years is probably asking for too much. It seems like even 1 year is asking for too much. For those of you who are working on startups or working as startups, how many of you know what you will be working on, what initiatives you'll be working at on 6 months down the line? I, for one, in my past experience, was often at certain points in time where I had no idea what I'm going to be working on later this week or even next month. Forget about 1 year later or several years later, right? But that is the senior leadership's job, to be able to give that much clarity to the team, saying, look, this is where we want to take the company to, this is what we want to stand for. Against that statement, people will be able to start different initiatives, come up with lists of features or enhancements that they would want to build. So then at the org level, you would give an ordered list of functionality. And I'm going to take the example of Bajaj Finserv Health again. So the objective is to try and become the biggest payer for healthcare, right? Similar to Optum in the US, which is essentially when a patient needs to pay for healthcare, they've taken some kind of healthcare procedure and they need to pay for it. The patient never needs to pay out of their pocket. It's always Optum that pays the healthcare provider. Obviously, Optum has the right policies and the insurance and whatever to make money. They are not a charity. But the fact is, money is handed over to the healthcare provider by this payer intermediary called Optum, and the vision is to bring the same kind of experience in India, right? So with that, what are all the different initiatives that you would want to have? You would definitely want to give some sort of a credit line to patients who need healthcare. You would want to integrate multiple partners together such that data is exchanged and data still remains in control of the patient. So you would have a whole bunch of initiatives. The backlog or the roadmap is formed by having an ordered list, saying that first, we need to let the customers know that such a service exists, that they can consume healthcare, and this is a way to finance their healthcare. So these could be some of the main functionality that the company would want to do, and that might take a year or so. And accordingly, you would try to bring visibility for as long as you, whatever length of time you can, right? That's at the senior leadership level. At the Scrum team level, so for example, say there is one Scrum team or one feature team which is saying, I am going to provide easy consulting experience with doctors, or I'm going to provide easy financing options whenever a person needs healthcare. This individual Scrum team will start figuring out, okay, here are the different features. I need to be able to search for doctors of my specialization and be able to get the best doctors around me, or if it is a teleconsultation, probably the best doctors in the world who can address my query. What are the enhancements of user experience? What are the enhancements of paying for a consultation? Actually, the consulting experience where people, where the doctor and the patient are talking to each other and so on, can happen. So all of those would be line items that are kept at the Scrum team level backlog. Don't go to the level of user stories here. So the user stories are, the typical line is, as a product manager or as a patient who needs healthcare, I want to be able to do this so that I can do this. So that's typically how a user story is written, and then some more details are written for that. So in the product backlog or in the Scrum team level backlog, you do not go to the level of user stories here. You just say improve search experiences is one item in my product backlog, right? Remember that by default, any major bug fixes, security breaches, any concerns raised by multiple customers or maybe feature requests from customers should be at the top of the list, because the world is telling you those are the ones that have the highest impact. So there is a level of ideation that happens here, but the major bug fixes and things by default should be at the top of the list. If, for example, you have a bug that your user is unable to log into your app, it doesn't matter what kind of search experience you're aiming for. Your failed login should be at the top of the list. That is more of an immediate deliverable. It's not even part of the roadmap or the backlog, but that's an immediate deliverable, right? How do you prioritize something like this? And yeah, so rather than a laundry list of functionality, right? And that if you just allow people to ideate and say, write all of your ideas in a spreadsheet and share it with me, you will have everything from the color of the button needs to be changed or the text needs to be changed from this to this, to we need to start an entirely new different business and maintain its own P&L. Two, we need to re-architecture our org completely and our engineering completely, and everything needs to move from microservices to monolith or vice versa, something or the other like that, right? A kind of thumb rule to do that is to use themes, right? So you have the pirate metrics, the AARRR. That's let me just look it up. That's acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. So that's essentially from your target customer, from a person in your target customer demographic, being aware of the fact that your product or service exists and hence getting onboarded onto your offering. That is acquisition. Activation is when they start interacting with the product and start using some of the features for the first time. Retention is when they repeat usage. That means they find that your product or a feature is useful and they come back multiple times. Referral and revenue are the hardest and the most monetizable parts of the funnel, where your customer is so happy with your product that they refer it to their friends and colleagues and eventually start paying for it, right? And that's where you want to get. So you might have features for each of these 5 phases. So saying that in the first quarter, I'm going to focus on acquisition. That means I want to get a lot of people on board on my product. I don't really care whether they end up paying, whether they end up using my product multiple times a day and things like that. We'll worry about that later. But let's first get them onto the product, right? So you might have a bunch of features on acquisition, things like I'm going to provide maybe discount vouchers, I'm going to do some social media campaigns, I'm going to do marketing, or I'm going to use whatever, right? I'm going to use referral from other apps, tie-ups with other apps or whatever. So those could be some of the features that you could have for acquisition. And similarly, quarter by quarter, you can go down these 5 pirate metrics and build features for each part of the funnel. Remember that in every quarter, there is something that is emphasized, but the others are not lost. It's not as though in the first quarter or second quarter, when you're trying to acquire customers, you're not going to build any features for them to be able to transact or to be able to pay. And that's going to come in quarter 5, right? It's just that is not the primary focus. That's not the emphasis in a certain quarter. And that emphasis shifts from quarter to quarter. So you'll have a thematic distribution that way. Or else you can have features by quarter to improve certain sections of the product. For example, you might say that I want to improve the chatting experience if your product does have a chatting experience, or I want to improve the help and support section. I want to improve the engagement with content. So do you have blogs and articles and newsletters or things like that? I want to improve certain sections of the product. So you could have features around that, saying that in quarter 1 I'm going to do this, in quarter 2 I'm going to do something else. So the broad point being, rather than just a laundry list of functionality across everything, which can soon get overwhelming, you'll easily have several hundred feature solutions like this. Try to bucket them largely into either parts of your funnel, that is the pirate metrics, or anything equivalent. Often companies tweak these funnel metrics according to whatever they feel or define best, or by sections of the product which you would want to improve. This second part, and let me use my laser pointer for that. This second part, which is the improvement of sections of the product, often works well for roadmaps that have gone beyond V1 or V1.1, and you have a fairly stable product, but it's still nascent. It's a stable but early stage product, and you're trying to figure out how to push it, right? So then you can say, here are the 3 or 4 different major pillars of functionality in my product. and here are the different features I'm going to build in that. Why am I saying this? You can then farm those out into individual Scrum teams and ask them to use that as their Scrum team backlog, which we spoke about in the previous slide, right? Next, how to prioritize. Use rough, simple prioritization frameworks. If you Google, you'll find Hook framework, MVP framework, Rice framework, some of the other framework. There are a lot of frameworks that someone or the other has used. Keep it very simple. Remember that many of these frameworks often ask you to put numbers. How confident are you that this will take 3 weeks to build and this is going to improve your retention by 15%, right? You're going to put those numbers of 3 weeks and 15%, and the framework is going to calculate a score and say this should be number 4 on your backlog, right? The thing is, there are too many unknowns. Obviously, COVID was an unknown, but that's like a black swan event that happens once in 100 years. But anything else can be an unknown. So if you take the example of UPI and digitization that has happened in the last 4 or 5 years, especially since data has become very easily available on our smartphones, which was not the case 5 or 6 years ago. The usage of cash and has dropped dramatically, and the usage of online payment systems has increased tremendously, right? So you have these kind of unknowns that can happen in the environment around you by other players you might not even consider. So imagine that say something like Meru Cabs or whatever was functioning very well before the entry of Ola Cabs and Uber. They did not expect this kind of a disruption to come in and essentially take away their entire market. So too many unknowns can lead to wasted effort and analysis paralysis, because you will start believing the rough numbers that you put as gospel truth, and that will tell you to do something at some point of these complicated frameworks will ask you to put that feature at some point in your backlog, but your gut might say, okay, it's not very important, or it is much more important than what it looks like. So hence use rough, simple prioritization frameworks. I leave it to you. All prioritization frameworks at the end of the day come to return on investment. You're putting in a certain amount of time, effort, money, and you're expecting a certain output from that. That's at the very basic. All of these prioritization frameworks come down to that. So just work with a very simple framework and try to use that to prioritize your product, right? Next, allow ample bandwidth to engineering improvements. It's like maintenance and checkup of a vehicle, right? So if you want to drive your vehicle fast, you want to make sure it's smooth and has accelerates smoothly, decelerates smoothly, brakes without choking up, doesn't have problems starting, and whatever, right? To perform regular maintenance on it, and you need to be able to keep it in top condition, keep tuning it for best performance, and so on, right? And this is a very cliche quote that you might have seen here and there, but it's very true. Processes are there for a reason. The brakes on your car actually help you go faster. Imagine driving a car without any brakes. You would be scared to go at anything above 20 kmph because you might hit something, you might hit someone at any point of time. The reason you're able to go above 60 is because you can brake and stop the car whenever you want, right? So similarly, engineering improvements in terms of the right automation testing, the right architecture to be able to lead to bug-free code or robust code that is resistant to bugs. Humans will make human errors. So someone misconfigures a product code in case of, say, a cataloging system like at Amazon or Flipkart. Someone mistakenly categorizes a phone as a shoe, right? Your system should not come down because of that. And for that, the right processes and the right engineering improvements and enhancements need to be in place to prevent the system coming down because of these sort of errors. The errors are not going to go away. The errors are done by humans. Humans will make errors, but you need to allow these kind of engineering improvements to be built. Hence, allot ample bandwidth to that in your engineering backlog, because the market-facing teams, whether it's your sales team, biz dev team, partner-facing team, they will have a whole bunch of requirements, especially from the individual partners that they are facing, right? So one client or one partner will say, hey, I want this. Can you please support it? Now, rather than saying, okay, this is an important client and I need to support it, again, that is also an angle that you need to take care of, but that should not solely drive your product backlog prioritization. So coming back, rather than listening to inputs only from your external revenue facing teams and making your product backlog a list of features or prioritizations only of these features. Ensure you keep enough bandwidth, enough space in the backlog for engineering improvements. Remember, often engineering improvements may be unknown at the time of creating the backlog, right? So just leave about 30% of time and effort for engineering improvements. As and when you build more engineering, you build more features, your engineers will come up and say, hey, if you want to do this, I need a month of time to do some re-architecture, to do some engineering improvements. And that time you'll know at least I've allotted a certain amount of bandwidth for it. So it's good, right? And as mentioned earlier, it's not a delivery plan. That requires more detail and visibility on what exactly the screens will look like, what are the APIs that will be called, do we even have the data that is required to be able to drive whatever feature, how do we collect that data, how do we do error logging, how do we do security, data security, fraud analysis, all sorts of things, right? So only once that level of detail is there, will you be able to put a date or a timeline against an item in the feature backlog and make it into a plan. So remember that a product backlog or product roadmap is more like um, uh, is just a list, or is like a vision, is like a rough hand sketch of what you would want your product or to do in the market, not a hand sketch of what your product will look like, but it's a word sketch or a rough sketch of what impact you would want your feature or your product to have in the market a fair amount of time down the road. Now that fair amount of time depends on the stage of your company and the stage of your industry. So fintech and blockchain and things like that are very new and very nascent. They probably don't have visibility beyond 6 months. Some other industries may have visibility for 5 years or even more. So take a call accordingly. It's a rough sketch of where you want to be, right? And that's it. It's a very quick talk. Quickly to summarize, use a product backlog as a skeleton of functionality that will be fleshed out in greater detail during planning and sprint execution. It is to drive the conversation in the ship room, make make go versus no go decisions. That's why you have the product backlog or the product roadmap, right? Keep the product backlog prioritized, not scheduled. So that is when once it becomes scheduled, it becomes a planned and execution deliverable. A lot of eyes and a lot of effort is put into it to make sure it gets delivered on time and quality. That comes later. Use broad themes or a capability lens to select and prioritize items. So the AARRR metrics or capabilities that you want to your feature or product wants to provide to the market. Use that lens to select and prioritize items. Also to discard items, obviously, like the example of selling soap for Microsoft. That is not part of either their broad theme or their capability, so they will not want to do that. And allow sufficient bandwidth to keep the engine, that is the delivery engine, the engineering pipeline engine, running smoothly. And that's it. With that, I come to the end of my talk. Any questions, any comments, I'd like to take them up. Please leave a note on the chat window. Okay. Ashish asked, are you saying that user stories don't go into the backlog? Largely, yes. So the fact that you have a user story, and when you say user story, I'm assuming it's already fleshed out, right? If you just have a headline, then it's not a user story, and that can go into the backlog, right? So and this user story term will come at the Scrum team level. So if you know your WhatsApp video calling business line or video calling initiative or whatever pillar of the WhatsApp app has a few user stories, if they are fully fleshed out, that means they are already planned and they'll probably be delivered in a couple of months or so. That will not go into the backlog of the roadmap. That will, whereas something like, I don't know whether eventually WhatsApp might want to have, say, holographic calls. I'm just throwing it out there, right? That would go into the backlog and would be taken up with the senior management for discussion, saying, video call team, are you eventually planning to support holographic calls? Please take that back to your Scrum team and figure out how to make it happen, right? I hope that answers your question. Chirashri asks, how do we decide our own performance issues for a product need to be considered as part of the product backlog? Great question, Chirashri. Now, ideally, you would want everything to be great performance, right? Now, this is in potentially infinite time and cost, right? So you would have funnel metrics that would tell you which are the user journeys, which are the screens that are constantly being hit by the users. So they are the most common, they are the ones that you draw in your UX flow, right? Now you have the side journeys or the error scenarios. For example, you don't expect, so if your payment fails, which is the kind of error scenario, it doesn't matter if that payment failure page takes 3 seconds instead of 1 second, but you're getting to the payment and the payment processing page, which is probably 98 or 99% of your transactions, cannot be slow in terms of performance, right? So take that kind of a lens and figure out which are the major journeys which are important to your feature or your product, and make sure you optimize them very strongly. And there's a lot of research, especially by Amazon and things, that say even fractions of a second of delay can cause users to be impatient and just move away from your app. Right? I hope that answers your question. Please let me know if you would require any more details. Abhishek asks, how confidently can we put the numbers in the framework? What do you mean by numbers? Are you talking about prioritization numbers or something on impact numbers? How do we prioritize between debt versus new features to be shipped in a backlog? What should be an optimum split between time allotted for tech debt versus features in a sprint for an early stage B2B marketplace in your experience? Mohit, any thoughts? My rough thumb rule is about 30%, right? You will often unexpectedly have a situation where your sprint backlog is actually not ready because, or your sprint delivery plan is not ready because the user stories are not yet finalized, the designs are not ready, and things like that. So very unexpectedly, you might have too much time for engineering, right? So ensure that you have enough work of tech debt, right? There, it'll seem like more often than not there are business requirements that keep coming one after the other, and there is a phase in which there'll be a lot of business requirements. It seems like your engineering team is not able to keep up. Your delivery plan is extending into half of next year, right? So you will have those yelling matches where the business team says, "Why are you so slow? Why is your engineering team not able to deliver stuff within the next quarter?" and things like that. But very unexpectedly, things will change. Even though your plan looks like it's going into half of next year, your plan will change because the business team changes their mind, or the product manager says, okay, I'm dropping all of these features, I'm going to start off on a different feature, and those user stories and designs are not ready yet. So you might suddenly have 2 sprints where there are only minor enhancements and bug fixes or color changes and things like that, and not very meaty work. In that case, use that time and keep a backlog of fleshed out tech debt stories and enhancements ready, because you can immediately pick that up and deliver. In general, I would say keep 30% of your sprint for tech debt. Take a call on that. Okay.
I can add a few points on that.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I typically feel that managing tech debt should be a separate presentation topic because it's quite complicated. As you know, that working on real product work is really important because it helps you move towards the goals that you have set. But minimizing the tech debt is also very important, which actually helps in developer efficiency, which will actually accelerate you in terms of product development, and also do not ensure any leaks. So I think the first important aspect that you should do is awareness about the technical debt, which is you should have a very close relationship with the engineering lead to understand that how much tech debt do you have and how severe it is, that when should we actually address it. Once you have that awareness, then you have to maintain a balance between what we need to ship and what you need to resolve debt, because both are actually helping you moving towards the goal.
Right.
The example that the kind of way that Arun suggested is a correct one. However, there are a couple of more ways that I've tried in the past which actually helps you out. One is that reserve one engineer bandwidth, like he said, 30% of the bandwidth. That engineer will continue to focus on tech debt and will probably rooster them out so that their engagement is built. Second is, if a new engineer joins your team, or if a new intern joins your team for quite some time, it's a good exercise for them to ramp up onto the code and actually solve a few things out of it. So that's also a creative way to solve technical debt that you can do. But yeah, the most important aspect is to understanding the severity of the tech debt. And I think the engineering needs to take a stance there, but you should understand their perspective also while building.
Absolutely. And great that you pointed that out, Mohit. One of the to the audience here, one of the most impactful ways in which you can present the requirement for cleaning up debt is to say this, that if you don't let us, or if you don't give us the engineering bandwidth to fix this architecture, this bug, or whatever you tech debt you need to do, show that the user will be impacted in this way, saying users login time, will be increased by 30%, or users, whatever, users will not be able to use their reward points for such and such a flow if you don't give me 2 weeks to go clean up my tech debt, right? So
For another
engineering,
example could be that you want to the time to create a new API would reduce by 30%,
right?
and that
So
will happen.
so Mohit, I totally agree. Often, business only folks don't understand what is the harm if APIs take 30% longer or 50% longer. They're like, okay, that is your problem. So APIs will take 30% less. If you don't do it, they'll take 30-40% more. So how do I care? So bringing that up, saying that, okay, if I do this, my APIs will be delivered 30% faster. Hence, your next feature, which is, say, a payment integrator gateway, instead of March, it can be done in February. That's when they'll sit up and say, oh, if I spend 2 weeks here, I can get a 3-month pull in on my backlog. So that's a good way to present the impact of tech. Any other questions? I see a long question from Sneha, which is priorities change by the week, and prioritization is most often based on stakeholder decision and their current view of business needs. This jeopardizes any plan or backlog. Very rarely it stays consistent to have a 1 to 2 month view. In such a scenario, what is the best approach to build a backlog?
First of all, I want to say you're normal. It happens with everybody.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Any thoughts here, Mohit? I'm just marshalling my thoughts.
So I completely agree with the slide that Arun said and the commentary that he said. 5-year plan, I think it's a myth. You can't create it these days. Even 1 year is also very difficult because in this very agile environment where the industry is moving at a very faster pace, if you have a plan for 1 year, probably I would say you are a good visionary, which we are not able to do. So best of luck with that. So Sneha, what you're feeling in your company is actually very normal, and it used to happen with me 3 years back. It is probably happening much more frequently today. So that's happening. Let me read your question again. I think it boils down the goals that you're chasing. For example, if in our organization we follow objective and key results. So at the start of the year, the organization actually creates objectives and some key results via which we will measure those objectives, right? When that is done, all the stakeholders come into the account and actually agree to OKRs, right? When you're saying that their views actually getting changed 1 or 2 months, if you have a standardized system in place like OKRs, it is very easy to argue or debate with them that are you saying that we should change our OKRs rather than talking about which feature should get implemented first? Because once you have a standard goalpost that you're chasing, then whatever features you are building will help you move towards the goalpost. The question that I'm understanding from your question is that they keep on changing the goalpost, right? So first of all, I just want to give you an advice because I have been there when I was an APM. Is I used to talk to sales, customer executive, last mile delivery, and order management system team, and all of them had a very different priorities, right? Now to solve is two ways. One, have a standardized system which ensures tracking what we are going towards for and what are the initiatives, and ensuring that everybody has the transparency to it, and OKRs help you achieve it. The second is in prioritization, there is also a weighted scoring method or a method in which you spend $100, right? That is an exercise which is very funny when you read in theory, but it is a good exercise that you can do in stakeholders that bring them all to the table, tell them that these are the problems that we are facing, and we are prioritizing the problems in this way because we feel that this problem will lead to the output much more, right? Because what happens very interestingly is, and that I realized after leaving Groupers, and now I feel that if I go there, I can solve it very easily, which is a hindsight bias, is sometimes the last mile team does not know marketing problems, and the marketing team does not know customer support problems. So if you bring them all to one room, tell all the problems. I have been into a situation that the customer support executive, after seeing that meeting and doing that $100 exercise, has told me, I will come to you after 4 months because I think there is a lot of fire in other department which you should solve. So I think going via any of these two ways might help, but I don't tell others.
Absolutely. I think very good points there, Mohit. Uh, it was this Sneha? Just one moment. Yes, Sneha. So one of the things, and we are going through exactly the same thing here at my current company. So one of the ways you can kind of hold people accountable. See, the thing is, whether it's senior management, someone else, you need to be able to communicate what is the effect of changing the goalpost frequently, right? So communicate relentlessly, communicate very regularly that this is what I have in my backlog now, and I'm aligning my team to do this. So current, for example, say you have 3 initiatives or you have some client or whatever, and you have a bunch of features for that. So you're saying that I have these features to satisfy this client. So for the next 2 months, I have this view, and say that if you want to change it, there is going to be such a cost. Obviously, what is in plan will get delayed. That has to be. I mean, though it sounds obvious, people don't get it. Typically, what happens is senior management says, in February, I asked you to build a certain feature, and you said it was 2 months work. Then in March, I said, okay, no, let's build. So you started working on that. Then in April, May, the senior management will come back and say, what happened to that feature that I asked in February? You were supposed to deliver it by March, April, right? And at that time, it's hard to say that, midway you change something, so I dropped that. They will say, look, you said 1 month or 2 months. I want expected to get one done in 1 month or 2 months. So it sounds very obvious that if you change or if you put items in the backlog, then whatever was there will get delayed. But people don't see it that way. So make sure that communication goes out very strongly, saying, look, this is what I currently have. If you're going to put something in, this is the cost. That is, this obviously will get delayed. Even the starting, so there is currently X. If you put Y in the middle of that, X will get delayed. And Y will take a while to get started because the org has to realign, relearn, and research on what needs to be done to satisfy Y, right? So that sets the expectations with the stakeholders that, okay, there is a cost to changing goalposts or decisions too quickly, and hence it's important for them to think through and at least give you hopefully a 6-month roadmap, but at least a 2 to 3 month roadmap, and not change it too frequently. I hope that answers your question, Sneha. And Alvin, thanks for your.
So Arun, there is another question that Amit sent to me. I'll ask it
Right.
to you. He sent
Sure.
on a private chat, which is how to represent the features that are still under discovery on the roadmap, as we may still not be sure whether the feature will impact the metrics.
So great question. One of the right way to do it, and unfortunately very few companies, startups do it, is you can do this with a user group, that is either of FGD, focus group discussion, or you can call in a couple of individuals, even hallway conversations with a team that is not related to you. So go to your finance team, HR team, operations team, if you are part of the engineering team, and show them the UX mockup. So it's very easy to build UX mockup on InVision. There are a lot of tools that will do this, right? So before you spend engineering time and effort in building a POC, if I understand the question is, how do I know whether my feature will work, will have the expected impact on the user? Build your screens. Build your screens as a draw your screens with the UI designer. Put it on InVision or something. You can actually put it on a device. It will look like a real app. It's just that there's nothing working. The buttons don't work. They just go from screen to screen like a presentation, right? And show it to a potential customer. It can even be a friend or colleague in your company, and say, look, I'm planning to build this. What do you think, right? Why are we saying this? This takes very little cost. If that person says, hey, I don't understand what the screen means, or why would I even use this? I'm getting something else cheaper outside or better outside. Why should I come to your app to do this? By getting that feedback at the screen level, you're ensuring you're not putting in engineering time and effort and then saying, okay, this whole thing was a waste, right? You will go back to your design, you will go back to your roadmap and tweak it before spending engineering time and effort on this. Does that answer your question, Amit?
I think Amit is not the call now.
Okay.